So whether you realize it or not, you're always operating under two types of thinking, two ways of orienting to life: the finite mindset and the infinite mindset. And the latter, the infinite mindset, is actually only a capacity that a very small portion of humans have unlocked, but unlocking this capacity holds the keys for human flourishing in the future. This mindset is how we move past the meta crisis that is the present day, and also holds the keys for you to live a happy, healthy, and truly meaningful and truly purposeful life. Like, imagine living a life where you're never grasping and searching for meaning, and like the vast majority of your days are directed and working towards a higher purpose. That's what the infinite mindset entails. That's what we're going to be speaking about today. Hey, but a little disclaimer, you're going to have to relax and let go of your ego a little bit in order to play this infinite game. Are you willing to do that? So if you want to download a new framework into the operating system that is your mind, listen up for about the next 30 minutes or so, because this is going to change your life if you truly allow it to. So let's dive in. So before we explain living life as an infinite game, we first need to elaborate on living life as a finite game, because playing the finite game is what 99% of humanity is doing, and becoming entranced with this mindset is going to have catastrophic consequences in your own life and in the collective. I mean, it already is having catastrophic consequences, and I guarantee that to an extent, you yourself are being entranced by this type of thinking. So I need to illuminate that for you first before I can really fully download this new infinite game into your mind. So what is the finite game? Well, the finite game is like any game we play, whether it be a sports game or a board game or what have you, in that the game has a clearly defined beginning and end point, with someone who wins and someone who loses. As it manifests in our modern society, this could be playing a sports game, like I said, working towards a job promotion, or like something like a man trying to get as many matches as possible in a dating app, a woman collecting designer bags to outshine her friends, a student competing for valedictorian, a YouTuber clickbaiting for viral views, or something like a politician spreading fear in order to win votes, a tech billionaire hoarding wealth while the workers struggle just to scrape by, or maybe a pharmaceutical company pricing treatment in order to maximize profits. And when you play these finite games, essentially what's happening is your consciousness narrows and you limit yourself to the boundaries of the game, and every move you make in your life is made for the sole purpose of winning, for advancing yourself, like a pawn moving forward on a chessboard trying to get to the other side. And you move forward, you play life to essentially win for yourself, whether it be playing for a physical reward, for monetary gain, or some sort of status symbol that recognizes the player as a worthy recipient of the prize. And our modern society is filled with these finite games. In fact, the cultural script encourages us to live life as a finite game. And I guarantee that you have several finite games that you are always playing at any given time. And while I'm not saying finite games are inherently bad, in many ways they can improve and advance our lives and also be fun when we engage in them in a relaxed way. I mean, to an extent, we actually need to play finite games in order to survive. But what's bad is when you become entranced, when you become hypnotized with a finite mindset, when your entire orientation towards life becomes about winning, about gaining prizes and rewards solely for yourself and for your small tribe. Basically, when your consciousness narrows and you develop this tunnel-like vision and you lose touch with the larger fabric of life. You might not think this happens to you, but I guarantee it happens to you every single day in smaller scale finite games. Because when you become entranced with winning for advancing yourself, your own personal gain, you cut corners. You become short-sighted. You fixate on yourself and lose touch with the larger fabric of life. You become disconnected from people and from the world. And you also make yourself and others suffer because you're constantly viewing others as competition. And when you have an entire society entranced, hypnotized with this finite mindset, which to a large extent we do, so many people are playing this modern capitalistic finite game where it's all about making it in life, having a lot of money, having nice things, having a lot of material comfort. Well, when you have an entire society that narrows their consciousness and plays this finite game, well, what happens? Well, you create a world of haves and have-nots, because in finite games, you always have winners and losers. And so you create a world that is filled with dominator hierarchies, which is a hierarchy in which those on the higher rungs of the hierarchy exert control and power over those on the lower rungs, using them as pawns in but another finite game, in their own large-scale finite game. And as a result, those lower on the hierarchy are often bullied, belittled, abused, and in the worst of cases, dehumanized. This is why we live in a world where the top 1% own over 50% of the world's wealth and the bottom 50% own less than 1% of the world's wealth. This is why we live in a world where the average CEO makes over 800 times the amount of the average worker of their company. This is why we had slavery in the past. This is why imperialism exists. This type of thinking is also why we are destroying our Earth, because humans are too concerned about advancing themselves in their own bullshit finite games that they can't even remember to take care of the planet that we live on. So this world of haves and have-nots is what inevitably gets created when we become entranced, when we become hypnotized as a society with a finite mindset. And I imagine that if you resonate with me and my content, you've already kind of let go of playing the modern capitalist finite game. We're not really playing that game here on this channel. You're probably not just trying to get as much money as possible, be as cool or as high status or as powerful as possible. You're actually probably trying to have a pretty big impact on the world and just do good and bring forth beauty through you in this life. But even still, you have to be honest with yourself and look at the finite games that you are playing and notice these subtle manifestations in your experience. Think of things, more smaller things like checking how many likes your social media post gets compared to others, keeping score of who texts first in your relationship, subtly one-upping your friends when you share experiences, giving advice to demonstrate your wisdom rather than to truly help, using bigger words to sound more intelligent. I've done some of these things before, and my consciousness narrows and constricts, and I feel disconnected and I lose touch with the larger fabric of life when I'm playing these finite games and I become entranced with them. So just be honest with yourself about how entranced you are with wanting these things like one-upping others, being better than others, elevating your status, getting admiration, and then maybe digging deep and doing shadow work on these parts of ourselves in order to heal. Because again, being entranced with this finite game, when your entire orientation towards life is this finite game, well, it prevents us from fully playing and engaging in the infinite game, which is what we need in order to live the most beautiful and amazing lives for ourselves, but also to bring forth that beauty in the world too. So now I'll explain this infinite mindset, which I cannot emphasize enough that unlocking this capacity for infinite thinking and truly aligning your life with it is rare and so needed if we're going to flourish as a species. So please listen up. I'm going to be dropping some bars here for the rest of the video, as I'm going to be talking about the 8 characteristics of the infinite game player. So, what is the infinite game? Well, the infinite game is a game that is not played for the purpose of winning, but for the purpose of continuing the play. A game that is not played within a boundary, but towards the horizon of whatever we can envision. A game that is played with others rather than against others. A game in which one does not have power over others, but power with others. A game in which fame and status is not used as an end in itself, but as a means to a larger end. A game in which winning does not come at the expense of others, but as a tool to assist others. A game that is played in the name of love rather than self. Author James P. Karst called this the infinite game. And again, this game can only be played by someone who can relax the ego structures, let go of their own selfish bias, and let go of their entrancement with finite games. But it takes a lot to truly live the infinite game. You have to have unlocked a lot of capacities within yourself, capacities that if you haven't unlocked, you will default to the finite mindset, just like the vast majority of all people. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to explain the 9 characteristics of the infinite game player. I've synthesized some points from books about the infinite game and also added some points of my own. So listen up, because your well-being and all of our well-being depend on this. So first and foremost, I'll say this. It's impossible to play the infinite game without a strong why. You have to have a reason to live beyond the ego's default settings. And so if you don't have a vision that inspires you, touches your heart, invigorates your spirit, and is powerful enough to make you want to work your life towards a cause, well, I hate to tell you, but you are not in infinite game playing shape. And so to start off your playing of the infinite game, I invite you to imagine a future state so beautiful, great, grand, and high that tears might come to your eyes. Think about, what is this world like? What are the inhabitants of this world like? What do they do with their lives? What is the reason for living? What is the government like? What is the economic structure like? You should set aside a lot of time and contemplate this and consume lots of material so you can learn things and add to this vision. But yeah, go out in nature and think about this vision. In fact, never stop thinking about it. Be as detailed as possible with your vision and write it all down. And writing down your vision and regularly adding to it, you got to keep adding to it, dramatically increases its potency and reduces the risk that in time it will become diluted or even disappear altogether. And so this vision is so important because it is your compass. And without a strong compass, you will inevitably veer off course and get sucked back into finite thinking. And so to maybe spur some thoughts in you, I'll provide you with some parts of my infinite vision. So here it goes. The exploitation of humans in the environment for profit becomes alien. Businesses are defined by how they serve, not by profit. Success of a society is not defined by how many jobs it creates and what its GDP is, but by how happy, healthy, fulfilled, and conscious the citizens are. Political borders fade as communities no longer define themselves by nationality, but by mutual respect, shared values, and collective responsibility. Adult development is recognized and encouraged. Communities and institutions help one develop new skills, learn new perspectives, self-actualize, and self-transcend no matter one's age. Psychedelics and other plant medicines become commonly used healers to aid in this process. Cities are nature dominant rather than human and human structure dominant. The most looked up to people are the most wise rather than the most rich and powerful. And so I could write an entire book on the intricacies of my vision, and actually plan to in the future on future fiction writing, so stay tuned for that in the far, far future. But you can see how it would take many, many lifetimes to create a world that embodies these ideals. And really, these ideals that I just listed are only finite markers of progress within the larger infinite vision. And at its core, my vision is rooted in increasing love and creating essentially a planetary wisdom culture through transcending the ego structures that have been responsible for the suffering, the exploitation, and destruction of our planet. And this is a cause that will never be fully actualized, at least not for like a gazillion years. So it's an infinite game that I am playing. And this whole inner development library that I am creating is just a move I am making within this larger container of the infinite vision, because the purpose is to help you grow and evolve so that you can enjoy life more and so that you can give your unique gifts to the world, nourishing it so that we can keep going and eventually birth this beautiful planetary wisdom culture in the far, far, far future. And so this is the game I've come to play, and that's what I'm seeking to do. But I imagine your game is going to be a little bit different. And so to help you out with developing your own vision. And so here on the screen, I'll list Simon Sinek's 5 qualities of a just cause, which I find to be great guidelines for forming an infinite vision. So these 5 guidelines is that the vision should be, number 1, for something. It should be affirmative and optimistic. Number 2, it should be inclusive, open to all who would like to contribute. 3 is that it should be service-oriented for the primary aim of benefiting other people in all of life. Number 4, it should be resilient, able to endure political, technological, and cultural change. And 5, it should be idealistic. It should be big, bold, and ultimately unachievable. And this one is especially important. If your vision is not big and bold and ultimately unachievable, well, it's not an infinite game. It should be so big and so bold that you want to work your entire life towards this cause. So take some time to contemplate. Dig deep, explore, dream big, find your why, and generate your vision. Without this, it will be impossible. It will be impossible to play the infinite game, and you will just default to the ego's like factory settings, basically, which is finite thinking. The second quality of the infinite game player is that they make all moves towards the horizon. Whereas the finite player always makes move within a boundary for the purpose of winning the game, the infinite player is always making move towards the horizon, towards the big, bold, beautiful vision, towards the endless possibility of what could be. And so really, once you have your purpose for playing the infinite game, and that probably requires a whole nother video or a series of videos because finding your purpose takes a long fucking time. The next step is determining your part in advancing the cause. What are your unique attributes, strengths, talents, and abilities that you can utilize to advance your cause? What product or service or idea could advance this cause? Remember, in the infinite game, there are no boundaries. The only limitation is the limitations of your imagination. And when you set your sights on bringing something so grand, so bold, and so idealist into fruition, well, every move made within the game is made towards the future, towards the endless possibility of the beauty of what could be. So contemplate what your part in the coming to fruition of your vision is, and that probably requires a whole nother video. That requires years of dedicated work to really find what your purpose is. I'm just laying down the groundwork here, but you got to do that and make moves accordingly if you're going to play this infinite game. And the third trait of the infinite game player is that they are a player of culture, not of society. Because the infinite game knows no boundaries, an infinite player will have to play beyond their society, which is a boundary. And because a society has boundaries, that is, it is a dedicated area of play, seeks to have power over others, maintain its influence, uphold certain social order, and desires to mold a certain worldview into its members, it is a finite game. You see how society is a constricted thing. Consciousness is narrowed in a society because a society has to basically hold people. The power of a society is determined by its wins against other societies in large-scale finite games. As a result of victory, the citizens of a society win prizes. This could be new land, new frontiers, protection, power, recognition, a flourishing economy, increased quality of life, increased influence of the society's values, etc. And those who desire permanence of these prizes become patriots, aka nationalists who seek to keep the prizes for themselves, which ends up coming very often at the expense of others and other nations and other societies. And very often these patriots are those members of the society who benefit the most out of everybody in the society. So in addition to being nationalists, they may also be racists, sexists, and classists in order to maintain their status. This is ultimately the birth of all struggle in a society, and is the reason that a society's number one threat is not in its clashes with other societies, but with the growing culture inside its own borders. And because culture is always changing, as its rules, norms, trends, and values are constantly in flux and know no limits, culture is an infinite game. And really at the heart of culture is deviancy, a defiance of a society's finite thinking. And if people were to continue the societal script over and over again, well, the society would be culturally impoverished and nothing new, moving, groundbreaking, and innovative would ever come to be. And so as where we can say a society is defined by its boundaries, it's a finite game. Culture is defined by its horizon, and for this reason, it is fair to say that infinite game players play for the culture. They seek to shape and influence the culture and are not just players of society. They're not just trying to uphold the societal order. So to sum up this point, basically what I'm saying is don't heavily identify with one group and then seek to just maintain the survival of that one group, whether it be your nation or your religious group or whatever, because that would be to limit your game playing within a boundary, making it more of a finite game. The fourth point, and this is a super important one, is to become an inhabitant of your future state. Simply working to change the external aspects of the world that are out of alignment with the vision will never work in actually making the vision a reality. To change the exterior is to simply change an appearance. To change the interior is to expand the vision, the motivation, the compassion, the love, the care, and the intelligence of the vehicle that creates the reality, which is you. So really the infinite game is a game of inner development. And the name of this channel is Inner Development, which is all about becoming someone with the consciousness that can actually bring the vision to reality. Because if you want to say end the exploitation and depression of all humans, you must first see and transcend the oppressor in yourself. And I guarantee it's in there somewhere. And if you cannot transcend the oppressor in yourself, you will never make a lick of change in doing so elsewhere. So really imagine what the consciousness of a person which inhabits your future state is like and seek to be that. The fifth point is to notice the desire for finite games. Simon Sinek said it well in his book, The Infinite Game, when he wrote, "Maintaining an infinite mindset is hard, very hard. It is to be expected that we will stray from the path. We are humans and we are fallible. We are subject to bouts of greed, fear, ambition, ignorance, external pressure, competing interests, ego. To complicate matters further, finite games are seductive. They can be fun and exciting and sometimes even addictive. Just like gambling, every win, every goal releases a shot of dopamine into our bodies, encouraging us to play the same way again, to try to win again. We must be strong and resist that urge. So it's really difficult to not fall back into finite thinking. Finite thinking is just, like I've said before, the ego's default settings, basically, because we are naturally hardwired to seek the easy solution to our problems, and the quick, immediate reward we often get from doing so only reinforces us to act the same way again. So you'll likely stray back into finite thinking quite often. I know I do every single day. And ultimately remember that finite games are not in themselves bad. Don't shame yourself for thinking finitely to a degree. Again, we must play finite games in order to survive and thrive in this world that we live in. But again, and I repeat myself, the major consequences arise when we become entranced by the finite mindset, when our consciousness narrows and constricts and we cannot see the greater picture, when we lose touch or we don't have this infinite vision that is the container for everything that we do in our lives. So in infinite play, finite games are still played, but they are taken less seriously and more playfully, because one's awareness of the ultimate vision prevents them from becoming seduced by the prize of potentially winning the game. So when we notice ourselves becoming entranced by whatever it is important to take a deep breath and to just take a step back and ask, is this really what I want to do? Is this really in alignment with my vision? Is this who I truly want to be? More often than not, this will be enough to expand back into the infinite mindset. But if you find yourself completely unable to let go of your finite ways, don't hate yourself for it or completely deprive yourself of something that you see as a need. And at the end of the day, we kind of have to relate this stuff to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the lower tiers, the deficient needs, we kind of need to play finite games in order to get those needs met. So sometimes karma needs to be burned through before it can be let go of. Whatever you do, at the end of the day, just try your very best to take a pause and operate from your highest wisdom and just follow the calling of your heart, that feeling that you have, that deep down your intuition knows what is right. The sixth point is to welcome surprise. Because the goal in finite games is to defeat the opponents, one must be prepared to predict, meet, or have a counter for each move the competition makes. If, in a finite game, our opponents surprise us with an unexpected move, our chances of winning decrease dramatically. Whereas surprise brings finite games to an end, the infinite player welcomes surprise. For each surprise reveals a new potential future, making the game all the more interesting to play. A finite-minded organization whose goal is to be the best and to make the most profit will be both surprised and also suffer mightily when new innovative technology from another company sweeps in to steal their market shares. Whereas an infinite-minded organization whose goal is to be better and keep improving in whatever they do will welcome the new innovative technology and see it as a way to improve their company and realize their vision. Do you see the difference here? When you're not competing, when you're not playing the finite game, you can take everything that happens in life and use it to fuel your infinite vision, because this infinite vision is going to be so flexible and you kind of just play with life when you're in this. So basically, if your vision cannot be held up through various political, economic, cultural, and technological changes, then the vision was not created with a finite mindset. So guys, you gotta welcome surprise. The seventh point is to play in complete openness, or as another way to put it, play with radical authenticity. Author James P. Carse was wise in regarding finite play as theatrical, because one must take on a role and put on a performance in order to win. The basketball player puts on the performance of attempting to score more points than the opposing team. The corporate player puts on the performance of being the perfect employee so that they can get the promotion. The finite-minded corporation puts on the performance of maximizing financial gain. People become entranced in this finite play because they want something, a reward, to maintain a public persona or some other form of selfhood. But in the infinite game, one is not playing as a means to an end. They play for the joy and for the excitement of playing, so they play in complete openness. Infinite players are not operating within any boundary, so their self-expression is not limited in any way. With this, we can say that infinite players are authentic. Of course, it is easier said than done to be fully authentic, as our mind unconsciously creates boundaries in order to protect itself all the time. But if you are seeking to become the best infinite player that you possibly can, the growth you will undergo will naturally expand your consciousness, capacity to love, capacity to open, and capacity to express yourself as you truly are. So guys, seek to be more open. The eighth and final point of infinite play is to let nature take its course. At the ultimate level, there is only one infinite game, and this is life itself. It is God, the universe, source, the one, Brahman, whatever you want to call it, engaged in the endless cycle of creation, of the unfolding of the cosmos. We as humans are a part of this creation and play an active role in it. And you, as the infinite player, get to decide what you want to call forth in this creation and devote yourself, devote your life to bringing it to fruition. Of course, finite players decide what they want to call forth to, but they do so less consciously. Finite players are not concerned with the whole of creation like infinite players are, but rather they use their creative potential to call forth a reality that's played as a means to an end through a narrow, constricted, egoic lens, creating a world of winners and losers, of haves and have-nots. And with the whole of creation in mind, infinite play is really about letting nature take its course. For infinite players, realize there is zero separation between themselves and the universe. There is a sort of getting out of the way element to the infinite game. That is quieting the ego and just letting spirit move us freely and unobstructedly. Ultimately playing the infinite game is just embodying who you truly are, which is goodness, beauty, love, unity, freedom, all of which in my eyes is God. Now, if that mystical schmistical explanation there doesn't resonate with you, just feel free to drop it. Just take what resonates from this video. But what I'm really getting at here, and like really all this video is it's just an invitation to make a conscious effort towards embodying the infinite mindset. With this mindset, we work to create a world that maximizes human potential and flourishing. With this mindset, we cooperate in bringing people's self-chosen, genuine, authentic long-term interests into a more harmonious, healthier, more inclusive, and less divisive society. With this mindset, we transcend the exploitative win-lose mentality of old in favor of a new, inclusive, win-win mentality. With this mindset, we play for the benefit of all people rather than for the benefit of a few. It will be difficult. We're not perfect. We are fallible. We can all be selfish to a degree. But through keeping the whole of creation in mind, staying rooted in our visions, looking towards the horizon, and shining the light of awareness on our finite ways, and choosing to act in accordance with what we truly want to create, with what spirit wants to create, we will all improve as infinite players, and the world will become a more peaceful, harmonious, loving, and less divisive place. If you would like to read more about the concept of finite and infinite games, I'd highly recommend checking out the books Finite and Infinite Games, A Vision of Life as Play and Possibility by James P. Carse, and The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. Carse's book will lay down the general theory, and Sinek will apply the theory to modern-day practices of business. There's also various talks by other people on YouTube, and probably elsewhere too, that you can find that talk quite a bit about this stuff. Although they might talk about it in a little bit of a different way. They often use the title of Game B instead of the infinite game. But yeah, this theory of finite and infinite games is profoundly important and can get people to better conceptualize the limitations of selfishness, bias, and egoic thinking on both an individual and collective level. So I encourage you to go complete the download of this theory into your mind and go seek to embody the infinite mindset more. That's really all I'm going to say for this video. But probably the hardest part about this work is developing the vision and getting really, really clear and really, really coherent on it. And then, of course, finding your place within that huge vision. That takes a lot of contemplation, a lot of trial and error. Sometimes it takes years and years and years to really figure that out. And if you're looking to speed up that process for yourself, I do offer coaching and mentoring. I believe that one of my greatest gifts as a coach is helping people really flush out their visions and extract their unique gifts so they can, contribute to that vision. But yeah, more information is going to be available on that pinned in the comment section. That's really all I have for today, guys. I hope you have a great day, and peace.